always read your player pack for a tournament. If you want to maximize your experience at a tournament, you have to read the freaking player pack. Las Vegas Open is coming this weekend. It is potentially the biggest tournament in the world. I think it's always dueling with the London Grand Tournament for Warhammer 40,000 every year to see who's actually the biggest. I unfortunately am not attending. There's just no way I was going to be able to make it this year. I would love to. Hopefully, I can make it out there next year. Um, as with many big tournaments, Las Vegas Open has its own FAQ where they've answered questions that players have put forth. They've made their own rulings, which does absolutely contradict Games Workshop's rulings. This is not unique. Other tournament circuits have done it, being the World Tween Championships of the WTC, UKTC. All these people, they very often will rule opposed to Games Workshops in order to make the game run more smoothly. Las Vegas Open has just happened to come up with some very, very fascinating rulings that will dramatically change the way that you build lists. And so the point of this video is not to shit on Las Vegas Open. Actually, I think overall, most of it makes a lot of sense. There's some that are just funky. But it is to teach you that if you're going to a tournament, you really need to read your player pack because it will influence how you're going to build the armies to play with. So when we're looking at this FAQ, and I have it pulled up on screen for you right now, most of the questions are very rational. They make perfect sense. Like this is a nice little ruling, which honestly, I would rule the same in any of my tournaments. In regards to WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. Must I have the correct gun type on my miniatures? I plan on keeping each unit identified, and the unit will be on the correct body and base. Just the gun loadouts will be policy. Is that against policy? Well, they say, hey, just send the models in question, and we'll give you a ruling. So basically what they're saying is it doesn't always have to be WYSIWYG as long as it's clear what your intention is. There's been some questions in here that people will ask, hey, if I have two Caladius grav tanks, but I only have one gun is correct, but they're both going to be running the same gun, is that okay? They're like, yep, just make sure that your opponent knows that both guns are the same. This is a ruling I would give. It's definitely against GW's policy, but I think it's a very rational way to rule. But then we have some rulings that are not very rational. Here we go. Will LVO be considering Land Raider sponsons as part of the model? And if not, will they be able to move through gaps in terrain that are 4 inches in width or greater? Well, the answer is no. For the purposes of moving the model in between ruins, so yes to question number 2. This is an exception to the core rules regarding hulls. So basically what the Las Vegas Open has done is they have rewritten the core rules specifically for the Land Raider for moving across terrain. Meaning that your Land Raider will be able to fit in between gaps that are just 4 inches wide, even though Land Raider is actually like 6.5 inches wide because of the las cannons or the flamers that you're going to have on the sides. This is a huge difference. And what it does is it means it's going to be much easier to pilot and run Land Raiders at the Las Vegas Open than it would be throughout the rest of the game. So what this tells you is that at the Las Vegas Open, you guys might see a lot more Land Raiders than you would at any other tournament. So this is tough for me. So one, I kind of understand the ruling because they want people to be able to use their models. The scale of the game has changed just because of the way that we're using terrain now. It makes Land Raiders very hard to use on most terrain sets. So they're trying to make it an exception to allow Land Raiders to be used again. And I do understand this. But the problem that this does is if we see let's say the winner of the Las Vegas Open this year took 2 to 3 Land Raiders. Well, that's now going to be considered our Land Raiders OP, and you're going to see other people pop up lists with Land Raiders that are just going to suck everywhere else. But even though Land Raiders do well at Las Vegas Open, doesn't mean they're going to do well in other tournaments simply because of this ruling. And if you haven't read this ruling, then you're going to have to understand that maybe you should take Land Raiders at Las Vegas Open. So you really need to read your player packs here, guys. It's a big, big deal. I, for instance, might really be tempted to run double Land Raider Redeemer at the Las Vegas Open simply because it's going to be so freaking easy to maneuver them. I think it's actually a very, very interesting build. But you wouldn't run that at most other tournaments simply because you can't move them around the table. Let's talk about some of the other ones that are also a little bit weird. I've pulled them out so I don't have to search this entire document. This one is very, very big deal. Concerning the Deathwatch Index's Black Spear detachment. If I am using this detachment and decide to include a Space Marine Codex unit, example, Intercessors, does that unit gain access to this detachment rule, or does it only affect kill teams? Well, the answer is if the intercessors have the Adeptus Astartes keyword, they benefit. This is very, very bizarre ruling. So this is directly opposed to what Games Workshop has ruled. Effectively, with the Death Watch Army Black Spear Task Force, they have three doctrines. They've got one doctrine that's going to give, which are called mission tactics. One doctrine, which once per game will give the entire army sustained hits. One, which will give the entire army lethal hits, and one, which will give the entire army precisions on crit hits. Well, it only applies to models that have the mission tactics keywords, and the mission tactic keyword is exclusively on Death Watch Kill Team units, and like the Watchmaster and Watch Captain Artemis. Well, the way that Las Vegas Open is ruling it is they're saying that anything in the Death Watch army gets to benefit from this. This makes Death Watch infinitely more powerful at the Las Vegas Open than they are in any other tournament. If I was playing at the Las Vegas Open, you better believe I'd be bringing Death Watch, and I'd be taking a Storm Raven, because now I can give my Storm Raven sustained hits, and I can give it lethal hits, and I can just turn one, move that thing up the battlefield, and I can just murk a unit. And that is a very, very big deal. So sustained hits on 24 shots out of the Hurricane Bolter, and freaking the Plasma Cannon, and the Multi-Melter that's twin-linked. This thing gets much, much more powerful. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a very turbocharged, powerful Death Watch army at the Las Vegas Open that might not work at other tournaments. So if you see Death Watch armies doing really, really good here, that doesn't mean they're not necessarily bad, but you might have to understand that you cannot take a Death Watch army that did great at the Las Vegas Open and play them in any other setting in Warhammer 40k. And this is kind of an issue just in the game in general, simply because it gives players a false sense of what is good, right? But once again, it will give you the opportunity to exploit this if you did read the player pack. So read your player packs, people. Let's read a few of the other rulings that they've gotten. Here's a few of them right here. So, question: is it against the rules, or is it a cardable offense to model for advantage in the following ways? Mounting guns at non-stock angles to increase reduced visibility or footprint. The turret on a Rogodorn or Hammerhead facing 90 degrees sideways or facing backwards. Unless approved for the event, models that appear to be modeled for advantage will be carded at the discretion of the judge. This is a great ruling. So many times people will change their models to make it easier for them to draw line of sight, and that's nonsense. It's cheating. It's modeling for advantage, and you're not supposed to do that. So we don't really allow that. We do allow you to be modeled for disadvantage, though. So let's say you want to make some really awesome wings on your captain, or some awesome wings on a dreadnought or something that happen to increase visibility. Well, what most tournaments will do is they'll say, hey, listen, you can't draw line of sight from that, but your opponent can draw line of sights for you, but you're still allowed to use the model. That's called modeling for disadvantage. That's generally fine, but if you're modeling because you want to make it cool, but that gives you an advantage, that's not okay. Now, the second part of this is really messed up, honestly. So, rotating the movable parts of models to non-stock angles or positions to gain reduced range visibility. If I have a knight, can I rotate my guns in or out to increase my visibility? Well, Las Vegas Open is saying rotating movable parts during the movement phase is permissible. This is kind of insane. It's kind of an insane ruling where they're saying, yes, you can model for advantage as long as it's magnetized, but not if it's glued. I don't get it. I think that's just a ridiculous ruling. So they're just saying, hey, man, we're going to allow you to exploit these little minute details of the game that no other tournament in existence has ever allowed. I don't know how much you guys are really going to want to pay attention to who wins the Las Vegas Open when you have rulings like this. Not that it means the players who win aren't going to deserve the win. They are. It's just it's not going to apply to the rest of the game because this is not how Warhammer 40k is played. Then we have another one called what happens if the player at the top of the turn finishes their 5th turn and is doing a secret mission and completes it, but the game ends before the player going second finishes their 5th turn. Well, the answer to this is if you cannot complete a full battle round, both players getting their turn, then you revert to the previous completed round. In your example, you would roll back the score to the end of turn 4 and not score the secret mission. This is a big problem. So let me just paint you a picture. And I don't know how the officials would actually handle this in table, like in game. But let's say you and I are playing a game, and you have 20 minutes left on the table at the end of your round 5. And I have 20 minutes on the table at the end of your round 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow play to the point where I run out of time before the end of round 5. Are you telling me that we're now going to have to revert to the end of round 4 for the scoring, and you get punished because I slow played the last round? And then you end up losing even though you should have won? Well, that sounds insane to me, and it sounds like a terrible, terrible ruling. So the fact that this is in the FAQ confuses me. I'm pretty sure the guys at LVO are on top of this a little bit better than that, meaning I don't think that they're actually going to allow that to happen. But that is a kind of a psycho thing to include in an FAQ. It's going to allow for people to abuse the clocks, which I gotta be honest with you, I kind of hate that. And then lastly, this is a great ruling that they have in, and I really, really wish that most tournaments would follow suit here, because there's a lot of things in the game that are like this. So the Demon's Secret Chariot ability does nothing, rules as written, because it only lasts for the charge phase and not the fight phase. Will the ability played rules as written, or instead, meaning it gets anti-infantry when it fights? So if you guys don't know, the Demon's Secret Chariot's ability is when it charges until the end of the phase, it gains the anti-infantry keyword on its weapons. Problem being, at the end of the charge phase is before you fight, meaning that there's no point in having anti-infantry on your weapon. So LVO correctly, in my opinion, has ruled that the ability should last till the end of the fight phase so that it can actually operate and it doesn't just not work. So there's this. So the FAQ is really interesting. Whenever you play at any tournament, you should always go through your FAQ. You should learn the particulars of this tournament because it might allow you to build things that you can't play at other tournaments. While I agree with this ruling, when you go to other tournaments, they might rule as written and say, no, it doesn't work. You can't benefit from that, which would say, hey, don't take Secret Chariots at other tournaments, but at LVO you can take them. While I don't agree with the sponsons ruling for the Land Raider, hey man, at LVO, freaking take it, do it. I horribly disagree with the allowing you to model for advantage. I think that's a terrible ruling, but listen, dude, do it because LVO is saying you can. It's totally fine. So you really need to read these player packs. I am excited to see how LVO goes. I'm pretty pumped up about it. I do know there's a bunch of great guys out there. I've got a couple of different clients who are out there that we prepped them for this, so we made sure that they were able to, be prepared for these things. I've got a lot of friends who are out there. I'm just excited to see how it goes. I think LVO is going to be a really fun tournament. These are just some really odd things that were in the player packs. I thought it would be a great example of how I can help educate you guys why you need to read your stinking player packs when you're preparing for a tournament. Well, that was it, guys. There's some other things in there. Most of them are actually very rational. Overall, don't take this as bitching and moaning. I think LVO has done a good job with their FAQ. There's just some really odd ones in there. And I just use this as a point of education. So with that, I'm going to leave you to your Friday. And maybe I'll catch you in the Twitch stream or the YouTube streams for LVO because I'm going to be watching. And I hope you will too. Well, until next time. Crop on, everybody. I have some actually really interesting stuff that will be out this weekend for you. I'm going to teach you how to read your opponent's mind in Warhammer, so be on the lookout for that. Until next time, crop on. Bye-bye.